what's happening right now in Bolivia is a coup. It's a military coup. They've ousted the president, Evo Morales, and they've run amok. They've gone wild. I mean, this has the CIA written all over it. Okay? If you know anything about the Cold War, if you know anything about the history of Latin America, you know that there isn't a coup without the CIA behind it. Matter of fact, when you hear about a coup in Latin America, you should assume by default that America is involved. You should assume by default that the CIA had something to do with it, and then check if they didn't. What's happened is basically Morales resigned. Why did he resign? He didn't do it of his own accord. He didn't do it out of free will. He did it because the chief of the army threatened him. He was like, step down, or you're going to get it. So he stepped down. And these right-wing protesters, violently protesting, they trashed his house. There's a video of that on Twitter. They completely trashed his house. They burned down his sister's house. They burned down a bunch of governors' houses as well. I mean, this is not a peaceful transition of power. This is not a president who's resigning because it's the right thing to do. He did it to make sure that no harm would come to other people in the administration, okay? He didn't want anyone else to get hurt, and he was threatened by the chief of the army, so he stepped down, okay? But Morales, what they're saying he did, the opposition, is that he rigged the elections, okay? Because they had elections on October 20th, and they're saying that he rigged the elections. Now, this is a joke, okay? Because the organization who investigated the elections, the Organization of American States, of which the United States is a part, okay? It's all of the states in Northern and Latin America. They were in Bolivia, and they declared that there was malfeasance, that there was wrongdoing, even though there's no proof of that. And guess where this organization, the OAS, gets most of its funding from? It gets it from Washington, D.C. Okay? Congress approves that funding. What do you expect? What do you expect? This has CIA written all over it. And this is the same organization that has also been anti-Maduro, anti-Venezuela, right? And trying to prop up this opposition in Venezuela. And now they're trying to do the same thing in Bolivia, right? Basically, it's become an arm of Washington, this organization, the OAS. It's an arm of Washington and the CIA. They're saying that there was wrongdoing, that there was fraud. There's no proof of that. He won the election by 47%. You need above 40 to win the first one. That's what happened. Morales won. And this would have been his fourth term. Now, here's the interesting thing. They didn't even let him finish his third term. Even if he had lost the election, he's still the president until January. Just like if Bernie Sanders wins the presidency next year in November, he's not the president until he gets inaugurated in January, right? Trump would still be the president until January. So the fact that they ousted him and forced him into resignation 2 months before his term is even up. I mean, come on. What is that? This is a coup. This is a seizure, an illegal seizure of power by right-wing armed groups backed by the CIA. Morales tried to appease the opposition by calling for new elections, but that still wasn't enough because they're not interested in democracy. They're interested in forcefully removing the president and installing a fascist right-wing government. So they're also saying, the opposition, they claim that he doesn't have the right to serve a fourth term because they had a referendum in Bolivia in 2017, I think. They voted no, you're not allowed to do a fourth term. However, the Supreme Court in Bolivia declared that he does have the right. The Supreme Court in Bolivia declared that there is no limit on terms. So he does actually have the right to serve this fourth term. So this opposition claim is bogus. And I mean, you really have to understand who Morales is. So let me put this into context for those of you who are not familiar with Morales, why the CIA, why the US are out to get him. Okay? This guy, he's a socialist. He's a hardcore lefty. He's anti-imperialist. He's pro-Palestine. I mean, I'm just going to show you a clip of him at the UN Security Council sitting next to Trump and calling out the United States. Let's take a look.
Quiero decirles, a Estados Unidos no le interesa la democracia. Si así fuera, no habrían financiado golpes de Estado y apoyado a dictadores. No amenazaría con intervenciones militares a gobiernos democráticamente electos, como lo hace contra Venezuela. No le interesan los derechos humanos ni la justicia. Si así fuera, firmarían los convenios internacionales de protección de los derechos humanos o las amenazas a los mecanismos de investigación de la Corte Penal Internacional. No promovería el uso de la tortura. No abandonarían el Consejo de Derechos Humanos y no separarían a niños migrantes de sus familias ni los pondrían en jaulas. A Estados Unidos no le interesa el multilateralismo. Si así fuera, no se habrían alejado del Acuerdo de París o del Pacto Global de Migraciones. No lanzarían ataques unilaterales, ni decisiones como declarar ilegalmente a Jerusalén como capital de Israel.
Look, he spins straight facts, and the U.S. doesn't like that because he's calling them out on their hypocrisy, as we saw Assad do in his interview last week. He's calling out the hypocrisy of the United States. They pretend to be for human rights. They pretend to be pro-democracy, but then they go do coups in other countries. I mean, if you know the Cold War, you know what I'm talking about. There's probably not one country in Latin America that hasn't had a coup or armed groups backed by the CIA. Not one, man. I think they already even ousted a president in Bolivia in the 70s. I forgot his name, but they've already done this before. So this is business as usual. This isn't a surprise to anyone who knows history, who knows the United States. And, you know, the US, the West, they can't stand seeing a socialist country doing well. You know, an independent socialist country. No, they can't stand that. Because Morales did a lot of good things for Bolivia. Okay? A lot of people, they use Venezuela as like some kind of measure of socialism, but then they won't tell you about Bolivia, where everything has gone actually very well. Okay? Inflation's kept in check. Wealth inequality way down. Wages tripled. The minimum wage tripled under Morales. This guy, he's been building schools, hospitals, roads, tons of investment in social construction. They don't tell you that. And so, you know, one of the most prosperous nations in Latin America, a lefty socialist country that's anti-imperialist and pro-Palestine. Oh, no. We can't have that. That's not going to fly. So this is what they do. Okay? This is what they do. It should come as no surprise to anyone who's familiar with Latin America and the history of the CIA. What's really funny is that no one has actually had the balls to call this for what it is, which is a coup. If you go and you read the New York Times, the LA Times, the BBC, they all say that, oh, he resigned, as if he went of his own accord, through his own free will, you know? No. Listen, man, when the chief of the army comes to a president or a prime minister and tells you, if you don't resign, I'm going to get you, that's a coup. Okay, it's a military coup. And Washington is very happy about it, by the way. Of course. Just as they were happy with the OAS's conclusion, you know, that, oh, the election was rigged, even though they couldn't provide any proof that it was. And Ilhan Omar rightfully said so on Twitter. It's a coup. So the Western media are trying to downplay the CIA's role, the malfeasance that's going on in trying to oust a democratically elected leader. This is exactly what they've been trying to do in Venezuela. This is exactly what they've been trying to do in Syria. You know, they just can't leave countries alone. They just can't. So I don't know where Morales is right now. He's fled. Like I said, they destroyed his home, his sister's home. They've been vandalizing and trashing the private properties of tons of these ministers and threatening to kill people. And it's crazy. It's really crazy. It's basically right-wing militias gone nuts. So we'll see what happens, man. Maybe he might go to a neighboring Latin American country. I don't know where he's going to go. Hopefully someone will take him in. But very interesting to see how the media have been treating this. They won't even recognize it as a coup. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. So there you go, man. This is the CIA and Washington, D.C. pulling tricks once again. And they can't stand that this guy was good in domestic policy, that he's good for his country. They're doing well economically. And by the way, he's their first indigenous president. Another important thing to note. They can't stand that. And they also can't stand that when it comes to foreign policy, he's anti-imperialist. He's independent. He's aligned with Venezuela. This is how they do, man. The United States and the CIA will go to any lengths whatsoever to remove people they don't like from government. They will do whatever it takes. Even if it means funding terrorists, they will do that. If you don't bow down and you don't get in line with Washington, D.C., they will come for you. This is not a joke. This is history. You're witnessing history before your eyes right now.